Welcome to ER Stories, Emergency Room Stories. What you're about to hear happened inside a hospital room, a place meant for healing, safety, and protection. But for one pregnant woman, that room became the most dangerous place she had ever been. Before we begin, take a moment to follow the channel, subscribe, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Your support helps these stories reach more people who need to hear them. This is not just a story about betrayal. It's about silence, fear, and a father who refused to let the truth disappear. Stay with us. This story begins now. Lucia Hawthorne was 7 months pregnant when the doctors told her she could not go home. The pain had started early that morning, sharp waves low in her abdomen that came and went without warning. At first, she tried to ignore it. She had learned to ignore many things over the past few months. But when the contractions began to tighten and repeat, fear replaced denial. By the time she reached the hospital, her hands were shaking. The diagnosis came quickly and without comfort. Threatened preterm labor. The cause was not infection, not physical trauma, not a visible complication. It was stress. Prolonged psychological stress that had pushed her body past its limits. The obstetrician explained it carefully, clinically, as if naming it precisely might make it less frightening. Lucia listened in silence, staring at the ceiling while machines were attached to her body. The orders were absolute. No unnecessary movement. No emotional agitation. Continuous fetal heart monitoring. Complete bed rest. The baby's survival depended on calm. Lucia was placed in a small private room in the maternity wing. White walls. A narrow bed. Pale curtains filtering the afternoon light into something colorless and flat. The fetal monitor beside her bed began its steady electronic rhythm, filling the room with sound. Beep, beep, beep. Each beat became a reminder that her child was still alive, still fighting. She lay on her side as instructed, one hand resting gently over her abdomen. Not pressing, just feeling. Her hospital gown was loose and clean, but she felt exposed inside it. Her hair was pulled back carelessly, strands clinging to her temples. Her face showed exhaustion more than pain, the kind of exhaustion that came from weeks of fear, rather than a single bad day. Stress had brought her here. Not loud arguments, not dramatic confrontations. Stress that grew quietly in the background of her life. Isolation. Silence. The feeling of being watched without being seen. Her husband, Richard, had changed long before the hospital. He was colder now, more distant, his absences longer, his explanations shorter. When Lucia tried to talk about how she felt, he dismissed it as pregnancy hormones, overreaction, sensitivity. And then there was Selena. Selena had appeared gradually, like a shadow that refused to stay behind her, messages that arrived without a name, comments that sounded polite but felt threatening, appearances in places Lucia never expected. Restaurants, parking lots, even once briefly outside her building. Always smiling, always calm, Lucia never confronted her directly. She believed silence would protect her. She believed enduring quietly was safer than provoking conflict. She believed stress was dangerous, and she was right, but she was wrong about what silence could save. A nurse entered the room in the late afternoon to perform a routine check. She adjusted sensors, reviewed numbers, and spoke softly, professionally. Everything was being monitored. Lucia just needed to rest. The nurse promised to return shortly and left the room, closing the door behind her. The quiet returned. Lucia exhaled slowly, practicing the breathing the doctor had taught her. Inhale through the nose, exhale through the mouth. Calm the body, calm the uterus. Protect the baby. The door handle turned. Lucia looked toward it, expecting the nurse. Instead, Selena stepped inside. She was dressed in deep red, a color that felt aggressive against the sterile white of the room. Her hair was perfectly straight, her makeup flawless. High heels clicked softly against the floor as she closed the door and, without hesitation, locked it. Lucia's fingers tightened around the blanket. Selena smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Only control. So, this is where you ended up, she said quietly. Lucia tried to shift, instinctively wanting to sit up, but pain flashed through her abdomen and forced her still. Her heart began to race. The fetal monitor responded instantly, its rhythm quickening. "You shouldn't be here," Lucia whispered. "You need to leave." Selena stepped closer to the bed and glanced at the monitor. She studied the pulsing line on the screen, the visual representation of Lucia's baby's heartbeat. Her expression hardened. "They told you to rest," Selena said. "Because you can't handle stress." Lucia reached weakly toward the call button mounted near the bed rail. It was just out of reach. Selena noticed and gently pushed Lucia's hand back down onto the blanket, as if correcting a child. "Don't bother," she said. "No one is coming." She began speaking softly, deliberately, about how fragile pregnancies were at 7 months, about how easily stress could undo everything Lucia was trying to protect. Each word landed like pressure, tightening Lucia's chest, making it harder to breathe. Lucia shook her head, tears forming. "Please," she said. "Just leave." Selena did not leave. She opened her handbag slowly and removed a black leather belt. The sound of the buckle echoed too loudly in the small room. Lucia's breath caught in her throat. Her hand flew instinctively to her stomach. "Stop," she whispered. The first strike came fast. Pain exploded along Lucia's arm. She cried out despite herself. The fetal monitor stuttered, the rhythm faltering before accelerating again. Selena struck again, controlled and precise, avoiding Lucia's abdomen, but making no attempt to hide her intent. Lucia curled inward as much as she could without moving her lower body, shielding her stomach, her body trembling violently. Tears streamed down her face. Her breathing became erratic. The monitor responded to every surge of fear. "Quiet," Selena hissed. "You're not going to make a scene." She leaned closer, her voice low and venomously calm. "You think lying here makes you untouchable," she said. "It doesn't. Not to me." After a final glance at the monitor, Selena stepped back, adjusted the blanket, smoothed Lucia's hair as if nothing had happened. She tucked the belt away. "Remember this," she said softly. "If you talk, stress does the rest." She unlocked the door and left. Lucia lay frozen, sobbing silently, the hospital room suddenly feeling smaller than ever. Lucia did not know how long she lay there after Selena left. Time lost its shape inside the hospital room. Minutes stretched into something heavier, thicker, as if the air itself had weight. Her arms burned where the pain lingered, deep and pulsing beneath the skin. Her body trembled uncontrollably, though she tried desperately to stay still, stay calm, protect the baby. The fetal monitor beside her bed continued to beep, but the rhythm was no longer steady. It rose, dipped, hesitated, then corrected itself again. Each irregular sound sent a surge of fear through Lucia's chest. She stared at the screen through blurred vision, terrified that the line might flatten if she blinked too long. She pressed her hands gently over her abdomen, whispering silently, begging her baby to stay strong. She focused on breathing the way the nurse had taught her. Slow, controlled, no sudden movement, no panic. But panic came anyway. Her heart raced faster than she could stop it. Sweat dampened her temples. Tears soaked into the pillow beneath her head. Every faint sound from the hallway made her flinch. Footsteps, voices, the roll of a cart, none of them stopping at her door. She was alone. Her phone lay on the small table near the wall, just beyond her reach. She stared at it, frustration tightening her throat. She tried to lift her arm, but pain shot through her shoulder and down her side. Her breath caught. The monitor responded immediately with another sharp spike. She froze, terrified that even breathing was hurting her child. The door handle turned. Lucia flinched violently. The door opened, and Richard Hawthorne stepped inside. He was alone, dressed neatly, as if he had come from work rather than a hospital corridor. His suit was perfectly pressed, his expression unreadable. He closed the door behind him and stood there for a moment, looking at Lucia not with concern, but with something closer to assessment. "Richard," Lucia whispered. Relief and dread collided inside her chest. She reached weakly toward him, her fingers trembling. "Please," she said. Something happened. Richard glanced first at the fetal monitor. He frowned slightly at the uneven rhythm, then shifted his gaze back to her face. There was no urgency in his eyes. No fear, only irritation. "You're unstable," he said flatly. "The doctors warned you about stress." Lucia shook her head, tears spilling over. "She came here," she whispered. "Selena, she hurt me." Richard sighed and stepped closer, stopping at the foot of the bed. He looked at her arms, then away. "You need to stop imagining things," he said. "You're in a fragile state." Lucia tried to shift, to sit up even slightly, but pain surged through her abdomen. She cried out softly and instinctively clutched her stomach. "The baby," she gasped. "I'm scared." Richard looked away. "You're always scared," he replied. "That's the problem." Lucia stared at him in disbelief. Her lips trembled. "Help me," she whispered. Richard did not move. Instead, he pulled his phone from his pocket and checked the screen. His posture relaxed, detached. The sound of the fetal monitor filled the space between them. Faster now, uneven. "This can't continue," he said. "You can't keep causing scenes." "I didn't cause this," Lucia said weakly. Richard leaned closer, lowering his voice. "No one forced you into this condition," he said. "You did this to yourself." The words crushed her. Lucia turned her face away, sobbing quietly. Her breathing became erratic again, and the monitor reacted immediately, its beeping sharp and insistent. "Calm down," Richard said coldly. "You're hurting the baby." Lucia pressed her hands tighter against her abdomen, desperate to regain control. "I need help," she whispered. Richard stared at her for a long moment. Then he turned toward the door. "I'll get Selena," he said. Lucia's head snapped toward him. "No," she cried. "Please don't." Richard opened the door anyway. Moments later, Selena Vale walked back into the room. She looked composed, untouched by guilt. Her red dress stood out violently against the pale walls. She smiled when she saw Lucia's pale face and trembling hands. "You called?" Selena asked sweetly. Richard closed the door behind her and leaned against the wall. "She's hysterical again," he said. "Make it stop." The words echoed inside Lucia's mind. She stared at Richard in horror. "You said you would help me," she whispered. He did not answer. Selena approached the bed slowly. "I told you," she said softly. "Stress does the work for us." She pulled the black leather belt from her bag again, letting it hang loosely from her fingers. Lucia shook her head, tears streaming freely now. "Please," she begged. "The baby." Selena did not hesitate. She struck Lucia's arm once, then again, quick and controlled. Lucia cried out as pain tore through her body. She curled inward, protecting her abdomen, trembling violently. The fetal monitor reacted instantly, the rhythm jumping erratically. "Enough," Richard said suddenly. Lucia looked up, hope flickering for a split second. "Enough noise," Richard clarified. "Someone might hear." Selena adjusted her aim, striking lower, then stepped back. Lucia sobbed uncontrollably, her strength fading rapidly. Her hands loosened their grip on her stomach as exhaustion overtook her. Selena smoothed the blanket back into place, hiding the marks. She adjusted Lucia's hair gently, mockingly. "There," she said. "Rest." Richard stepped closer and looked down at Lucia. "If you tell anyone," he said quietly, "I'll say you fell, or that you imagined everything. No one will believe you." Lucia closed her eyes, tears slipping silently down her temples. They left together. The door closed behind them. Lucia remained alone, shaking, the fetal monitor still beeping unevenly beside her as the room swallowed her silence. Lucia lay alone after the door closed behind Richard and Selena. The silence that followed felt heavier than the violence itself. Her body remained curled on her side exactly as the doctors had instructed. But nothing inside her felt still. Pain pulsed through her arms in slow, burning waves, radiating into her shoulders and chest. Every breath felt shallow, incomplete. The fetal monitor beside her bed continued to beep, but the rhythm was unstable. The line rose, dipped, hesitated, then corrected itself again. Each irregular sound tightened Lucia's chest with fear. She stared at the screen, terrified that the line might disappear if she stopped watching. She pressed both hands over her abdomen, fingers trembling. "Stay with me," she whispered silently. "Please stay." She tried to control her breathing the way she had been taught. Inhale slowly. Exhale carefully. Reduce stress. Protect the baby. But fear refused to loosen its grip. Her heart raced beyond her control, and the monitor responded immediately. Its beeping sharper now, more insistent. Lucia turned her head toward the door, listening. Every sound from the hallway made her flinch. Footsteps, distant voices, a cart rolling past. None of them stopped. Her phone was still on the table near the wall, close enough to see, too far to reach. She stared at it, frustration and helplessness tightening her throat. She tried to lift her arm again, then stopped when pain shot through her shoulder and down her side. Her breath caught sharply. The monitor spiked. "No," she whispered. "I'm sorry." She pulled her arm back and froze, afraid that even the smallest movement was dangerous now. Her entire body trembled as another wave of fear crashed through her. She felt the tightening deep inside, the unmistakable warning sign she had been told to watch for. Pressure, sharp discomfort, the terrifying sense that her body was beginning to work against her. The beeping grew louder. Lucia shook her head weakly, as if denial might help. Minutes passed, or seconds. Time dissolved into a blur of pain and fear. Another contraction seized her abdomen, sharper than before. Lucia cried out softly, unable to stop the sound this time. Tears streamed down her face as her body shook with the effort to endure. The monitor reacted instantly, the line jumping erratically across the screen. Her vision narrowed. The edges of the room darkened, creeping inward. She felt light, detached from her body, as though she were floating just above the bed. The sensation terrified her more than the pain. Lucia fought to stay conscious, counting the beeps in her head, clinging to the sound of the heartbeat as if it were a lifeline. 1, 2, 3. Don't stop. Her hands slipped weakly from her abdomen and rested on the blanket. Her breathing slowed, uneven and shallow. The room dimmed further. Then the door opened. Nurse Emily Park stepped inside, pushing a small cart with medications and charts. She paused just beyond the threshold, her trained eyes scanning the room before she spoke. Something felt wrong immediately, though she could not yet say what. Lucia lay pale and damp with sweat, one arm resting limply at her side, fingers curled inward. Her breathing was shallow and irregular. The fetal monitor emitted an unstable rhythm that made Emily's stomach tighten. "Mrs. Hawthorne?" Emily said softly. There was no response. Emily moved closer and gently touched Lucia's shoulder. The skin was warm, clammy. Lucia stirred faintly, her eyelids fluttering but not opening. Emily glanced at the monitor. The numbers told a troubling story. Repeated fluctuations within a short period of time. Not catastrophic, but not normal. Especially not for a patient ordered to remain calm and still. "This doesn't add up," Emily murmured. She checked the chart clipped at the foot of the bed. Threatened preterm labor due to prolonged stress. Continuous monitoring. Avoid agitation at all costs. Emily adjusted the blanket slightly and noticed faint discoloration near Lucia's wrist. At first glance, it could have been pressure bruising, but something about it felt wrong. The shape, the color, the placement. Emily leaned closer. She gently lifted Lucia's arm a few inches, careful not to cause pain. Another bruise appeared along the upper arm, partially hidden beneath the sleeve of the hospital gown. Emily's pulse quickened. These were not medical bruises. Lucia moaned softly as her arm was moved. Emily immediately lowered it back into place. "It's okay," she said gently. "You're safe. I'm here." Lucia's lips moved, but no words came out. Tears slipped silently from the corners of her eyes. Emily straightened slowly and looked around the room. The door was closed. The chair near the window was empty. No personal items, no flowers, no sign of visitors lingering. She checked the visitor log on the wall. Richard Hawthorne, Selena Vale, Emily turned back to the monitor and scrolled through the recorded data. Her finger traced the timeline, noting the exact minutes when the most severe fluctuations appeared. They aligned precisely with the visitor times. Emily felt something settle coldly in her chest. She stepped quietly into the hallway and called the attending physician, Dr. Matthew Clean, keeping her voice low. "I'm with Mrs. Hawthorne," she said. "There are irregular fetal heart patterns that don't match spontaneous stress response, and I'm seeing unexplained bruising." There was a brief pause on the line. "I'm on my way," Dr. Cleena replied. Emily returned to the room and resumed her calm, professional demeanor. She checked Lucia's vitals again, documenting everything carefully. Blood pressure elevated, pulse rapid. Signs consistent with acute distress layered on chronic stress. Lucia stirred again, her eyes opening slightly this time, unfocused and glassy with fear. "Don't be afraid," Emily said softly. "You're not in trouble." Lucia swallowed with effort. "Did someone hurt you?" Emily asked gently. Lucia's eyes darted toward the door. Her breath hitched. She shook her head almost imperceptibly, then winced, as if even that small movement caused pain. Emily did not press her. "I understand," she said quietly. "You don't have to say anything right now." When Dr. Clean arrived, Emily briefed him outside the room. He listened intently as she pointed out the timestamps, the bruising, the pattern that could no longer be ignored. Inside the room, Dr. Clean examined Lucia carefully. "This isn't accidental," he said quietly. "There's been trauma." Emily nodded. "I believe both physical and emotional." Dr. Cleena ordered full documentation. No data alterations. Fetal monitoring preserved exactly as recorded. Bruises photographed discreetly for internal records. After he left, Emily positioned herself at the station directly outside Lucia's room. She did not leave. Time passed. Eventually, Lucia's fingers twitched weakly. Her eyes opened. The phone. Someone had moved it closer. Her hands shook violently as she reached for it. Her vision swam. One name stood out above all others. Victor Hawthorne, her father. Fear surged. Fear of making things worse. Fear of retaliation. Fear of not being believed. Another contraction rippled through her abdomen. Lucia pressed the call button. The phone rang once. Then Victor's voice answered. "Lucia." The sound of it shattered her composure. "Dad," she whispered. Her breath broke into sobs. Victor heard the fear instantly. "Where are you?" he asked. "Are you safe?" "I'm in the hospital," Lucia said. "I'm scared." "What happened?" he asked carefully. "She came," Lucia whispered. "Selena, she hurt me. Richard let her." There was a pause. Brief, controlled. "Listen to me," Victor said firmly. "Breathe slowly. You did the right thing calling me." "They might come back," Lucia whispered. "They won't touch you again," Victor replied. "I'm coming." The call ended. Lucia lowered the phone onto the blanket. For the first time since it began, she was not completely alone. Victor Hawthorne arrived at the hospital without drawing attention. He did not rush through the entrance or demand explanations. He walked calmly through the lobby, his posture controlled, his expression unreadable. To anyone watching, he was simply another visitor arriving late in the evening. Inside, every detail registered. The muted lighting, the placement of security desks, the quiet efficiency of nurses moving through the halls. Victor checked the directory and made his way toward the maternity wing. When he reached the nurses' station outside Lucia's room, he spoke softly, but firmly. "I'm Victor Hawthorne," he said. "Lucia Hawthorne is my daughter." The nurse nodded and confirmed Lucia was resting under observation. Victor asked to speak privately with the attending physician and the charge nurse. Within minutes, Emily Park joined them, followed shortly by Dr. Matthew Clean. Victor listened as they explained what they had observed. The fetal heart rate fluctuations, the unexplained bruising, the precise correlation with visitor times. He did not interrupt. He did not react emotionally. When they finished, he nodded once. "I need everything preserved," he said. "All medical records, all monitoring data, no alterations." "That's already been ordered," Dr. Clean replied. Victor asked to see Lucia. He entered the room quietly and stopped a few steps from the bed. Lucia lay pale and exhausted, one hand resting protectively over her abdomen. The fetal monitor continued its uneven but present rhythm. Victor did not wake her. He simply stood there, watching her breathe. Before leaving the room, his eyes lifted to the hallway camera, visible through the small window in the door. Its angle was slightly off. "Has that camera always been positioned like that?" he asked. Emily hesitated. "I noticed the same thing earlier." Victor nodded. He filed it away. Outside the room, Victor made a phone call. His voice was low and controlled. "I need internal surveillance data preserved immediately," he said. "All feeds, all backups." Then he made another call. "Come to the hospital," he said. Quietly, Victor did not confront anyone. He waited. Richard Hawthorne believed the silence meant success. Later that night, he returned to the maternity wing with Selena at his side. The hallway was quiet. No alarms, no police, no confrontation. To them, it looked like nothing had changed. "They bought it," Selena said confidently. "Hospitals see this all the time." Richard nodded. "As long as she stays quiet." They entered Lucia's room again. Lucia lay weak and pale, her eyes half open. Fear flashed across her face when she saw them. Her hands tightened over her abdomen. "You need to stop this," Richard said. "The doctors are watching your stress levels." "They know," Lucia whispered. "The nurse saw." Selena laughed softly. "Saw what? What proof is there?" She gestured casually around the room. "No witnesses," she said. "No marks anyone can see." Richard leaned closer to Lucia. "If anything happens," he said quietly, "it will be because you couldn't stay calm." From just outside the door, Victor stood silently, positioned where the curve of the wall kept him out of sight. His phone rested in his hand, recording legally from a public hallway. Every word was captured. Selena continued speaking, unaware. "You really thought you could fight this," she said. "You should have stayed quiet." Lucia shook uncontrollably. "I just want to be safe," she whispered. Richard laughed softly. "Safe from what? Your imagination?" The fetal monitor reacted again, its rhythm faltering. "See?" Selena said. "Stress does everything for us." That was enough. When Richard and Selena left the room, Victor stepped back into the hallway. He did not follow them immediately. He waited until they were several steps away. Then he moved. Police and hospital security arrived within minutes. Quietly. Efficiently. Richard and Selena were stopped in the hallway, confusion turning quickly into alarm. "What is this?" Richard demanded. An officer spoke calmly. "You're being detained for questioning regarding an assault on a hospitalized patient." Selena protested. "She's unstable. This is ridiculous." Victor stepped forward. "You spoke freely," he said evenly. "I listened." The officer produced an evidence bag containing the black leather belt recovered from Selena's belongings. "Do you recognize this?" he asked. Selena's face drained of color. Inside Lucia's room, Emily adjusted the monitor as officers escorted Richard and Selena away in handcuffs. The sound of the hallway faded. The room felt different now. Lighter, safer. Lucia stared at the doorway in shock. Victor entered and knelt beside her bed. "You're safe," he said softly. "They can't hurt you anymore." Tears filled Lucia's eyes. But this time they carried relief. In the days that followed, the truth moved quickly. Charges were filed. Assault on a vulnerable patient, endangerment of an unborn child, coercion, conspiracy to conceal harm. Richard's access to Lucia was revoked. Selena was held pending trial. Lucia remained hospitalized under protection. Slowly, her breathing steadied. The fetal monitor began to show a calmer, more consistent rhythm. The danger was not gone, but it had retreated. When Lucia was finally discharged, she walked slowly but steadily out of the hospital, her father beside her. The world outside felt different. Quieter, safer. She had entered the hospital believing silence would protect her. She left knowing the truth had. And inside her, beneath her steady breathing, a heartbeat continued. Strong, present, alive.